I was a top student in med school, but for a few reasons, I now work for a private forensic consulting firm. It's a strange gig, mostly providing clients, usually paranoid rich guys, with definitive proof that their significant other is cheating. The work is easy, the pay is great, and every day is like watching a new episode of some trashy reality show. I guess you could call it unique kind of people watching. That is, until the day a client walked in and handed us a pair of pants. Embroidered on the waistband were 3 bold letters, C.M. I froze. They looked exactly like the ones I'd given my wife just a few days ago. 1. I saw the style of the pants and couldn't help but think, hey, this guy has good taste. But when my eyes locked onto the embroidered initials, my head buzzed like it had been hit with a stun gun. My blood ran cold, and a layer of sweat instantly slicked my skin. C.M. The initials of my wife, Chloe Miller. They were a custom job, a one-of-a-kind gift. The odds of this being a coincidence were lower than winning the lottery. When Chloe saw them, she blushed. You nut, she'd giggled. Since when do you know how to buy me clothes? I had wrapped my arms around her waist from behind, smiling as I whispered in her ear, it's our little secret, baby. You like them? You better reward me for it tonight. She laughed and slipped out of my arms to try them on, bouncing on the balls of her feet. You and your crazy ideas. Now get back to work. Back then, I was giddy with anticipation for the night ahead. I never imagined those same pants would reappear in my life in the most cliched, soap opera way possible. I stood there, dumbfounded, my mind a complete blank. My colleague Dave nudged me. What are you spacing out for? The client's waiting. Let's get to it. Check for any trace evidence from a third party. The words snapped me out of it. Clinging to a sliver of hope, I asked, what's the angle on this one? What do you think? We're dusting for prints, especially around the waistband. If we find someone else's prints there, well, you know what that means. Forcing down the panic, I steadied my trembling hands and carefully placed a sample under the microscope. While the analysis ran, I fought the urge to storm out and beat the hell out of whatever scumbag was involved. I tried to sound casual as I asked Dave, so, who's the unlucky chump this time? Dave let out a sleazy chuckle. It's not the guy who got cheated on. It's the sugar daddy. He's got this married woman on the side, but the rule is she can't sleep with her actual husband. He's paying us to make sure she's following the rules. And if she's not, I pressed. He dumps her. If she is, he keeps her around for a while longer. What is this woman thinking? Is she nuts? I couldn't help but mutter. They've shot me a look. She's thinking about money. Genius, he said with a smirk. You'd be surprised what some women will do for a payday these days. You should get out from under that rock you live under. After a careful examination, the results came back. Only one set of fingerprints on the pants, and no traces of any foreign biological material. But not of dread hardened in my stomach. Lately, Chloe had been making all sorts of excuses to avoid being intimate. I thought it was my fault, that I wasn't being romantic enough, which is why I'd ordered these custom pants to surprise her. I never would have guessed she was saving herself for another man. And I was the clown, the fool they were playing for a sucker. My hand shook as I passed the report to Dave. He glanced at it, and a mocking smile spread across his face. Well, look at that. Another sucker is born. His words were a knife twisting in my gut. I couldn't believe Chloe would betray me, but the evidence in my hands made the cruel reality impossible to escape. 2. I rubbed my face hard, trying to force some clarity back into my head. I knew I couldn't be impulsive. Beating the guy to a pulp wouldn't solve anything, especially since I didn't know how far things had gone with Chloe. I had to be calm. I had to make a plan. I crept over to the conference room next door and peered through the crack in the door, getting a look at our client. He was in his 40s, dressed in a designer suit, his hair slicked back with too much product. But his looks were nothing to write home about, and the hair on top of his head was thinner than my eyebrows. I couldn't help but wonder, what in the world does Chloe see in this guy? The man nodded, satisfied, after reading our report. Dave immediately went into full suck-up mode, offering him a cigarette. Looks good, Mr. Reynolds. The man, Mark Reynolds, took a long drag, his eyes narrowed. Looks like the woman knows how to listen. Dave obsequiously held out an ashtray for him, and the two of them burst out laughing. My stomach churned. I memorized his license plate, Reynolds 1, and turned away. I knew this would be the first real clue to uncovering the whole truth. 3. When I got home that evening, Chloe was already there. She greeted me at the door, taking my coat. "Hey, honey. Tough day at work." I looked at her face, so familiar and yet suddenly so alien. A storm of emotions swirled inside me. "It was fine," I mumbled, slumping onto the sofa. I used to pretend to be exhausted after work, but tonight, the fatigue was bone deep. I watched her move between the kitchen and the dining room, and the whole scene felt surreal. Was this really the woman I loved? We'd been together for 7 years, married for 3. She kept a perfectly normal schedule, commuting to and from work like clockwork. There was never anything to be suspicious about. She was always the gentle, quiet woman everyone envied me for marrying. I got up, walked slowly behind her, and gently put my arms around her. She jumped as if she'd been electrocuted. My heart sank to the floor. I leaned back against the dining table, arms crossed. I decided to stop pretending. "Where are those pants I got you? You changed." A flicker of panic and confusion crossed her face as she scrambled for an excuse. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, a nervous habit. "Oh, that. I spilled coffee on them at work today. They were a mess." I played along. I couldn't get the stain out, so I had to toss them." "You're not mad, are you, honey? It was an accident." I forced a smile. "Of course not. It's just a pair of pants." 4. After Chloe was sound asleep, I quietly picked up her phone. I knew it held the secrets I was looking for. I easily bypassed her passcode and started scrolling through her messages. To my disappointment, everything looked normal. The conversations were mundane, with no hint of anything intimate. It was obvious she had already deleted all the evidence. But that wasn't going to stop me. Using the skills I'd picked up at the agency, I connected her phone to my laptop and ran a forensic recovery program. When the deleted messages began to populate the screen, my heart shattered. She and that man had been carrying on for a long time. Their chats were filled with flirting and secret plans. There were transaction records, too. He'd sent her thousands of dollars through Venmo and Zelle, along with receipts for luxury gifts. Reading through it all, I felt like a complete and utter fool. For her, I'd given up on my dream of getting a Ph.D., taking this job so I could give her a better future. And all the while, she was stabbing me in the back. A fire of pure rage ignited in my chest. I swore to myself that I would make her pay a painful price for what she had done. 5. I started tailing Chloe. I planted a micro GPS tracker on her car so I could monitor her location at all times. After a few days, I noticed a pattern. She was making frequent trips to a luxury hotel. I decided it was time to see what was going on for myself. I strode up to the hotel's front desk, my face a mask of calm. I gave them Mark Reynolds' name and coolly explained I was his assistant, here to extend his room booking. The clerk checked the system and confirmed the room number, 2333. She added, "Mr. Reynolds has the room booked for the entire month. Would you like to extend that?" A cold, barely perceptible smirk touched my lips. A fixed room number. That would make things much easier. Next, I found a seat in the lobby, pulled out my phone, and placed a video call to Chloe through her messaging app. She always used to answer my calls instantly. This time, nothing. Just as I expected. She was probably preoccupied with him. Without hesitation, I sent her a live location share request. I thought back to when we were first in love, how we'd always share our locations, constantly checking in on each other. I wanted to see the look of panic on her face when she realized I was right downstairs. But she missed the last chance I would ever give her. She ignored the notification. When I got home that night, Chloe was already there, her face dark and angry. It was just what I expected. Not only had I been at the hotel, but I had also remotely set 3 alarms on her phone to go off every 10 minutes. Alarms that would sound even if the phone was on silent. I can only imagine how frustrating it must be to be constantly interrupted when you're on the verge of something. She was sprawled on the couch and snapped at me, "What did you want at lunchtime?" I was in a meeting I couldn't pick up. The way she lied so brazenly while trying to act composed was almost impressive. The nerve of her to be angry at me. I sat down across from her, my eyes fixed on hers. "Oh, I had a consultation near your office and thought I'd surprise you. By the way, your office is room 428, right?" Her eyes widened in panic, like a deer in headlights. You went to my company?" she stammered. "I did," I said, pressing on. "But you weren't there. Where exactly were you working overtime, honey?" It was then I realized that when a woman lies, she can deliver an Oscar-worthy performance. She launched into a long, elaborate story about a demanding client, a stressful project, and how disappointed she was to have missed my surprise. She even remembered to tell me to call ahead next time. I listened to her rambling, feeling nothing but a cold void inside. Then, I delivered the next line for my script. You said your phone alarm kept going off. Maybe it's malfunctioning. It's okay. I'll buy you a new one tomorrow. At that, her demeanor changed completely. She leaned in, kissed my cheek, and cooed, "You're the best husband," before heading off to take a shower. I watched her go, a wave of disgust washing over me. The moment the bathroom door closed, I grabbed an alcohol wipe and scrubbed my face, tried to erase the filth of her touch. I've always been a bit of a clean freak, and the thought of her betrayal made my skin crawl. She'd left her clothes in a heap outside the shower. I seized the opportunity, using a sterile cotton swab, to take a sample from the underwear she'd just taken off. Then, pretending everything was normal, I told her I had an emergency at the hospital and rushed back to my office. I knew Chloe didn't like using protection, so their encounters were likely unprotected. Just as I suspected, the sample analysis showed exactly what I was looking for. I carefully preserved the evidence. It might come in handy later. The next day, I went to the mall and bought her the newest iPhone. Following a tutorial Dave had sent me, I set it up perfectly. Now, if necessary, I could remotely control her phone and monitor her every move. When I presented it to her, her eyes went wide. I could never bring myself to buy this. It's so expensive. I managed a weak smile. I even won a prize from a store promotion, I said, pulling out a small teddy bear keychain. Cute, right? Look, the color matches your purse. It'll look great hanging on it. She gasped with delight. Oh, it's adorable. But a moment later, the excitement faded, and she said she was exhausted and needed to get to bed. Pathetic. It was clear she was terrified I might suggest we get intimate. Of course, the teddy bear wasn't just a toy. It contained a professional-grade listening device and a micro camera, courtesy of Dave. One time, it captured a clear shot of Mark Reynolds turning his back to discreetly pop a little blue pill. Dave didn't understand my elaborate methods. He frowned, confused. Why are you making this so complicated? Just get a few guys, bust in there, and it's over. Simple. I just smiled. That's thinking too small. Catching them in the act? What does that accomplish? It's just a messy scene that ends in a breakup. I've wasted 7 years of my life on this woman. I'm not letting her off that easy. I'm going to make them pay a much more painful price. After a period of observation, I confirmed that Chloe and Mark's trysts were incredibly predictable. Every Tuesday and Thursday, during their lunch break, they would meet at that same luxury hotel near her office. Tuesday was the day Mark's wife went to visit her parents, and Thursday was her weekly get-together with her friends. It was the perfect, God-given opportunity to catch them. I spent hours meticulously clipping together all the audio recordings of Mark trashing his wife. Things like, "There's no passion left with the old hag at home. She's 3 years older than me, and no matter how much she dolls herself up, she's still just mutton dressed as lamb. I can't even stand to look at her." Or, "Baby, I wish I could be with you every day. Every time I'm lying next to her, all I can think about is you." And the real kicker, she talks about retiring at 50 and handing the company over to me. The day that happens is the day I kick her to the curb. On a bright Thursday afternoon, I timed it perfectly. I sent the hotel address and the edited audio file to Mark's wife, Eleanor. I thought to myself, any woman who hears her husband say such heartless, disgusting things will fly into a rage. I could only hope she would deliver the lesson these two so richly deserved. After hitting send, I dragged Dave to a diner across the street from the Hilton, and we found a quiet booth to watch the show unfold. I had already called the hotel's room service, confirming that Mark had ordered 2 business lunches and asking the staff to add a glass of grapefruit juice to the order. They happily obliged. Everything was under my control. Dave was watching me, completely baffled. "What the hell are you planning? I don't get any of this." I gave him a mysterious smile. "Just wait. You'll see." Sure enough, right on cue, Eleanor Reynolds stormed into the Hilton with a posse of 7 or 8 women. I quickly pulled up the live feed from the teddy bear camera on my phone. Mark had just gotten out of the shower. Things hadn't started yet, which was a little later than I anticipated. Just then, a frantic knocking echoed from their door. "Who is it?" Mark yelled impatiently. The second he opened the door, Eleanor lunged forward and kicked him squarely in the stomach. Her friends poured in after her, splitting into two groups. 4 of them, led by Eleanor, surrounded Mark, raining blows on him with their expensive handbags and screaming, "You bastard! Mark, you're cheating on me with this slut. How could you?" Mark scrambled to protect himself, pleading, "No, honey, no. It was a moment of weakness. Stop, please. Nothing even happened." "Nothing happened? You mean you didn't get the chance to?" Eleanor's eyes shot down to his groin, and her face contorted with fury. "You disgusting piece of trash. I'll humiliate you right here." With that, she lifted her high-heeled foot and drove it with all her might into his crotch. A gut-wrenching scream filled the room as Mark collapsed, clutching himself and writhing on the floor. Across the street, Dave and I both instinctively crossed our legs. The scene was brutal. "Damn," Dave muttered, "Mark's really enthusiastic, huh?" I chuckled coldly. "That's not him. That's the magic of Viagra and grapefruit juice. The juice contains a compound that inhibits an enzyme in the liver, preventing the drug from metabolizing properly. It basically doubles the dose. Add in the sudden shock and adrenaline. Of course he's enthusiastic. It was a little surprise I prepared especially for them." Dave was impressed. "You've thought of everything. That's a med school brain for you." On the screen, Mark's face was pale as he continued to roll on the ground. "Honey, call 911, please. It hurts so much," he begged. But Eleanor ignored him. After taking out her anger on Mark, she turned her attention to Chloe. Her friends descended, grabbing Chloe by the hair, dragging her from the bed to the floor. They slapped her face back and forth, screaming, "You cheap whore. You home-wrecking tramp, sleeping with my husband." When I judged they'd had enough, I stood up. "Come on, let's go up and see the show." Dave rubbed his hands together excitedly. "I've never been in on a scene this big. This is awesome." "Listen," I said sternly, "when we get up there, let me do the talking. You just stand by the door and record everything. No matter what I say, don't act surprised." When we arrived, the hallway was already packed with onlookers. It was a total circus. People from other floors had come out to see what the commotion was, and dozens of phones were already recording. I pushed my way through the crowd and into the room. Chloe was a wreck. Her hair was a mess, her face was bruised and swollen, and her body was covered in scratches. When she saw me, her eyes filled with terror, like a cornered rat. "Honey," she cried out, her voice trembling. I rushed over without hesitation, pushed away the 2 women holding her, and took off my suit jacket, draping it over her shoulders. "Honey, what's going on?" I asked, feigning concern. "Someone texted me, saying you were here, selling yourself." I didn't believe it for a second, so I came right away. Chloe's eyes widened, and tears streamed down her face. "Honey, it's not what you think. He forced me. You have to believe me," she sobbed. I had to stifle a laugh. Even now, she was playing the victim. One of Eleanor's friends sneered at me. "You're her husband? Your wife is a cheating whore, and you're defending her." My face hardened. I spun around and slapped the woman across the face. "How dare you say that?" I roared. "I know my wife. She would never do something like this. Someone set her up? Where's that bastard? I'll kill him." Mark, still whimpering on the floor, saw my murderous rage and shrank back into a corner, too terrified to speak. It was Eleanor who, red-faced with anger, shot back. "They were both naked when I got here. What else could it be? Are you blind?" I pretended to finally notice Mark and snarled. "So it was this son of a bitch who hurt my wife?" I grabbed a heavy glass ashtray from the nightstand and lunged toward him, acting like I was about to bash his skull in. Just then, the crowd parted, and several plainclothes officers entered the room. "Nobody move? Police." Of course, I was the one who had called them, timing their arrival perfectly. I lowered the ashtray and pulled Chloe into a tight embrace, whispering in her ear, "It's okay. Honey, the police are here. I'm here. You're safe. You were assaulted. We'll use the law to protect you and make sure this monster pays." Chloe trembled in my arms, too scared to speak. With the blood and bruises on her face, she looked like a genuine victim. The police began their questioning. In front of his wife, Mark insisted he had never met Chloe before and that she had tried to seduce him. Hearing this, Chloe's face twisted in rage, and she shrieked, "You're lying. It was you. You tried to rape me." An officer frowned. "Ma'am, rape is a felony." "Are you sure?" Hiding in my arms, Chloe said with conviction. I'm sure. He forced himself on me. He needs to be arrested and sent to prison. Mark started to panic. I never even touched her. You can run a test. Don't listen to her, he yelled desperately. But he had no idea that whether he touched her today was irrelevant. Because that morning, I had planted the sample I'd collected earlier onto the underwear she was wearing. One test, and they'd find exactly what they needed. Just like that, a simple cheating scandal escalated into a serious criminal case. Mark was rushed to the hospital for his injuries, while Chloe was taken to the station. Before getting into the squad car, she clung to my hand, tears streaming down her face. Honey, you have to believe me. I was forced. You're not going to leave me, are you? I looked at her pathetic act with utter disgust, but I maintained my gentle facade. Of course not, sweetheart. I believe you. Don't worry, I'll get you justice. That bastard will pay. Chloe seemed to hesitate for a moment. Then her expression hardened. Honey, I swear I didn't cheat on you. We'll see how long you can keep this up, I thought to myself. Proving a rape case is complicated. Although the police had hotel security footage and bank records showing financial transactions between Mark and Chloe, proof that they knew each other, it wasn't enough to clear him. In a marriage, if sex happens against one partner's will, it can still be classified as rape. With Chloe sticking to her story and her visible injuries, it was hard to determine if they were from Eleanor's friends or from Mark. And with the discovery of Mark's DNA on her underwear, his denials were useless. To add to the chaos, I sued Eleanor's friends for assault and battery. My goal was to overwhelm them, to force them to fight a war on multiple fronts. Sure enough, a few days later, Eleanor contacted me. We met at a quiet coffee shop. We were both smart people, so we got straight to the point. What do you want? She asked. I calmly opened my laptop and played a video for her. After watching it, her face turned pale. What is this? She demanded. I closed the laptop. Ms. Reynolds, the consulting firm I work for, specializes in solving difficult problems. If you were to hire me to assist in your husband's case, I am confident I could get the charges dropped. She understood immediately. A look of caution crossed her face as she switched to a business-like tone. I imagine your firm is expensive. It is, I replied flatly. For a case like your husband's, our fee is $500,000. Her jaw dropped. That's robbery. He's not worth that much. I'll divorce him before I let you extort me. I smiled. You're right, Ms. Reynolds. A common cheating husband might not be worth that much. But the father of a child is a different story. You could divorce him. That's simple enough. But your son is about to take his SATs. Are you not worried this scandal will affect his mental health? Your son is innocent. Are you willing to gamble with his future? She was stunned. You investigated my family. Of course I did, I thought. I wouldn't make my move without knowing all the key players. Mark is badly injured now, and perhaps you don't need him anymore, I continued. But he will always be your son's father. That can't be changed. If he's convicted of a felony, your son's future is ruined. My words hit their mark. She bit her lip and said through gritted teeth, This is blackmail. Not all, Ms. Reynolds, I said calmly. This is a professional arrangement. If you hire our firm, the entire fee will be paid to the company. It has nothing to do with me personally. She frowned, thinking for a moment. I need to think about it. I nodded. Fine, but you don't much time. The brawl at the Hilton had been filmed by bystanders and went viral online. The reputation of Eleanor's company took a massive hit. They were in the middle of bidding for a major university facilities contract and were disqualified due to the damage to their public image. If Mark was convicted of rape, the blow to their family and business would be devastating. She had no choice but to swallow this bitter pill and pay. As for how she would deal with Mark later, well, that would be interesting to see. That evening, Dave called me ecstatic. Dude, you're a genius. Eleanor Reynolds signed the contract. This is a huge commission. As soon as the money comes in, I'll pay it out to you as a bonus. Shortly after, the money was transferred. I sent Eleanor the unedited video from the day of the incident, which clearly showed Chloe was a willing participant and that no sex had occurred. With this new evidence, the D.S. office dropped the charges against Mark. Chloe, however, was prosecuted for filing a false police report and perjury. The evidence was irrefutable, and she was sentenced to 14 months in prison. The next time I saw her, I was shocked. Her once long, beautiful black hair was cut short. Her eyes were sunken, and she was terrifyingly thin. She looked like a completely different person. The moment she saw me, she became emotional, her eyes filled with regret and a desperate hope. "Honey, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Can you forgive me? I was wrong. It's not that long. A year and a half will fly by. When I get out, can we start over?" Any trace of pity I might have had for her vanished. The fact that she still thought she could win me back was laughable. I took a deep breath and said evenly, "I only came to tell you that I've packed up all of your things and sent them to your parents' house. As of now, there's nothing between us. Don't try to see me again." She stared at me, dumbfounded, as tears streamed down her face. She gripped the bars of the visitor's booth, her voice trembling as she begged, "Honey, please forgive me. I'll never do it again." I just shook my head, not even bothering to look at her again as I turned to leave. I whispered one last word under my breath. Pathetic. After seeing Chloe, I went back to the office to pack my things. Dave came over, eager for gossip. "Hey man, you hear about Mark Reynolds? If he'd gotten surgery right away, he might have been saved. But guess what? His wife refused to sign the consent forms. Said she was worried about the risks and wanted to observe his condition first. Well, that observation cost him everything. He's a eunuch now. She divorced him, took him for everything he was worth. He didn't even get to keep a pair of socks. I heard he's working as a security guard over on Theater Row now. Oh, and get this. Eleanor is suing Chloe, claiming all the money Mark gave her was marital property and she has to pay it all back. None of it surprised me. It was all going according to plan. I pulled a prepared resignation letter from my pocket and handed it to Dave. Before he could speak, I said, "Brother, I'll never forget what you did for me, but this job was never what I wanted. I've already found a replacement for you, a biology undergrad from the university. I'll train him myself to make sure there's no disruption to the business." Dave was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "All right, I always knew we couldn't keep you here forever. Good luck." Of the $500,000 consulting fee from Eleanor, I left $100,000 for the company as a thank you. Then, with the remaining $400,000, I walked away and never looked back. Being unemployed was harder than I thought. As someone with a medical background, I couldn't stand being idle. After much thought, I worked up the courage to contact my old graduate school advisor, a man who, at nearly 70, was still as sharp as a tack, and asked to reapply for the doctoral program. When he saw me, he was clearly annoyed. He shot me a dirty look and said, "I thought you gave up on medicine. What are you writing papers for now?" I looked down, ashamed. Years ago, for Chloe, I had abandoned my Ph.D. to take a job that paid more but betrayed my passion. I had not only disappointed my mentor, but had also lost my way. But after the turmoil of the last few years, I knew with absolute certainty what I wanted. I lifted my head and looked my advisor straight in the eye. "Professor," I said, my voice steady with conviction, "I want to come back to medicine. I want to finish my Ph.D. and become a pathologist. I want to dedicate my life to the field of diagnostic pathology." My advisor studied my determined expression, then gave a slight nod. I was finally back on the university campus I had left 3 years ago. In that moment, it felt like I was being reborn. This was where I belonged. This was the stage where I could truly use my talents and make a difference. Looking back on those 3 lost years, I was filled with a complex mix of regret and profound gratitude.